Okay, Brandi Searcy, welcome to the How Does She Do It podcast. Welcome, welcome.
Tara, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you today. I love the subject in which we're going to cover mostly. And before we dive in, take a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell them a bit about who you are and what you do.
Wow, that is such a loaded question. So, I am a pharmaceutical research scientist and I'm also an entrepreneur. I launched the business Better Than Fine very recently in September of 2023. Actually, my second business. I also have a skincare business, but I'm here today to talk mostly about Better Than Fine, just because I think it is the kind of the culmination of it is most representative of who I am. And I think it took a long path to get here. But I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so many questions already. Okay, scientist turned entrepreneur. What an interesting journey. Talk to us a little bit about what led you to get into science and specifically your field.
All right. So this is a serious throwback to college. I started college and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So within the first year, and I think it was the first semester, I was sitting in a class and thinking, you know what? This is a complete waste of time if I don't know where I'm going, because otherwise I'm just going to kind of take classes until, what am I doing here if I'm just going to take a bunch of classes? So I signed up. I talked to a career counselor who happened to mention that a friend of his worked for Coca-Cola making the recipes, so actually making the formulations. And I said, well, that's what I want to do. And he said, my friend's a chemical engineer. So I said, okay, well, that's the path I'm going in. So I wound up, from there, graduating as a chemical engineer. Uh, Still didn't know that the field of formulation development even existed, because here in America, at least, there are very few colleges that offer a degree in formulation science or in formulation development. And so, I graduated, didn't know this field existed, wound up taking a job at the CDC. It was just a quick kind of a fellowship position. So it lasted about a year. Decided from there that I wanted to go back to grad school and pursue organic chemistry, because during that year I'd been working with one of my undergrad professors on this organic synthesis project. Uh, then wound up going to grad school working for the professor that found that molecule. It was an anti-cancer compound that I was like doing some uh, just literature research on how would you synthesize this compound. And so wound up then going to pursue a PhD in this area, became a PhD dropout, and kind of fell backwards into a job in pesticide formulation development of all things.
Okay, this is a fun journey. Okay.
And yeah, well, and that's not to mention a few cross country moves in the process. So, so with this job now, I was in pesticide formulation development and learning all of the basics of, formulation science, how do you, the all of the interactions that it takes to make an emulsion and this kind of thing. Then I started making my own skincare on the side. And this was way back in 2007. As I started making my own skincare, because I also battle with acne, actively battle with acne, even though I'm in my 40s now. And kind of long story short, due to family circumstances, wound up needing to leave that job, move across the country again, wound up in Colorado, and then kind of landed backwards in my first pharmaceutical scientist role or pharmaceutical research role. And that's where I've been since 2010. I think where the health piece ties into this is I was raised by a registered nurse. My grandmother was also a nurse, and my sister is also a nurse. So, kind of a
Oh,
three
wow.
generation. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of healthcare science is still clearly a part of what your family does. Okay, I'm seeing the connection.
Yeah. And so growing up, it was having all of these conversations. I'm very well versed in medical lingo because my mom and grandma would speak it around us as kids. So, so yeah, that kind of brings us to at least sort of the present, or at least sort of being
Yeah.
able to see how I could start this company.
Yeah, it's just fascinating in general. I gotta be honest, I'm an artist, like I'm an artist more than anything. And entrepreneurship came as still, I think it's a little bit of a leap for people to say, how do you go from being an actor and an artist to being an entrepreneur? Um, but the science part for me is just, uh, I don't know. Let's just give you a round of applause. Like, I don't know how people do science. I don't know how people get advanced degrees in that and then become a scientist. And then, like, you're doing all, even the chemistry and everything that you're talking about for me is so far outside of my world that it seems almost magical to me that you can think that way. Like, truly, it's so different than even the people that I tend to be around. And that's your background is the opposite, right? You're around a lot of people in the medical field. And so it led you to this career where you're formulating different products. You start the skincare company, uh, which is very creative, right? It's
Yeah.
not because when I think of science, Brandy, I'm thinking like you're following rules and you're taking different formulas and you're doing, I think of it being not creative at all. But here you are doing like the most creative thing and creating your own skincare line from the background from that. Are there other misconceptions that me and the audience might have about being a scientist?
Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Kara, because it is such I mean, it is such a field of experimentation. Really and truly, you have these core principles and these core things that you have to, that are kind of, the confines or the rules or whatever, but you can always test them out and see, are they really the rules? And I think that's where the help piece of it is so, I think that's where the help piece of it comes in because um, there's only what we know when it comes to health.
Hmm.
But is that really the truth? I mean, is
Ooh,
that really the essence of it?
ooh. There's only what we know when it comes to health, but is that really true? And is that the essence of it? And that's a tweetable moment. That's what Oprah would call a tweetable moment. How did that influence your decision to jump into entrepreneurship?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I kind of dipped my toe into entrepreneurship kind of circa 2008 with the skincare after I started making it for myself. I started sharing it with
That
family
is
mostly.
so cool that you just developed your own skincare line to solve your own problems.
Yeah.
That is so
Well,
boss.
well, and my aunt suffers from like rosacea. And so I gave her some of this and she goes, Brandy, I can't even believe it, but this is helping. And she offered to do some before and after pictures, or at this point it was 30 days or 60 days into it, and then you know the progress over months and eventually years. But it was, I mean, it was kind of profound, and I played around with it until I got that, like seriously played around with that as a company and trying to get that off the ground, and was actually doing pretty good at local markets. In 2010, when I had the opportunity to enter pharma, that particular company had an entire division dedicated to like dermatological pharmaceutical products. And I was on their injectable division. But because they had that, and because I was using a lot of the same suppliers,
Hmm.
it might be different ingredients, but it was the same suppliers.
Yeah.
My husband had a sit down with me and was like, okay, the last thing you want to happen is for them to find out that you're doing this and them to misconceive and believe
Mm,
that you used your job to create all
mm.
these connections. And so for that reason, I set it aside for 6 years, so from 2010 to 2016. And when I left that job and took a new one in pharma that did not have a topical division, I started right up again and kind of green, because a lot changed in 6 years, honestly. There were now green preservatives really weren't a thing back in 2008 when I started. There were safer preservatives than, say, parabens at the time. but there weren't these green preservatives like we have the options of using today. And so I took the opportunity to green up the formulas, um, went through, and this is where, because I know nothing about branding, and this was even obvious back in 2010, knew nothing about, this side, the business side of it. And so um, took quite a few courses around branding and marketing and sales and all of these sorts of things that are necessary, I think,
Yeah.
to own a business.
Yeah. I just really am fascinated. I'm trying to move past it, but I can't because I'm just so blown away. We use products all the time. In my hair, there's a certain product, my skin, my everything. Products they come and they go, like even what you're saying as the industry standards change. But it's cool to meet someone who understands the science behind it, uses the ingredients to solve the problems, and then also understands the entrepreneurial journey. It's really a pleasure to have you on the podcast. That's super cool.
Well, thank you. I'm really loving this conversation.
Yeah, this is great. And it's cool too because I mean, maybe not you, but I think a lot of us have that friend who Pinterest stuff and she's like, I'm gonna put these essential oils and these, this coconut oil and this thing together, and I'm gonna make you a face cream. And you're like, this is amazing. You use it, and then like you break out. We have
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
But to have the science behind it is so interesting. One of the things I always say about entrepreneurship is it really is just solving problems. That's essentially what it is. You find a problem, you solve it, you bring it to the market to try and solve other people's problems. And if it solves a big enough problem, or if you solve a small problem for a lot of people, then you are in commerce. Now you have a business. And as a scientist, that's ultimately what you're doing too. You're solving problems.
Yeah, it feels very different. And even in pharmaceuticals, where obviously we're working on medications to treat a certain condition, but with it, I think because pharma is so big, there's so many steps of the process. It feels so far removed from the final patient or customer or whatever we want to call this person,
Yeah.
that it's hard to keep that connection, because here I am, I'm very much siloed doing my little thing, and then I kick it over the fence to the next person and they do their little thing, and then it's a process.
Hmm. So fascinating. Um, there's a company right now that did get me through some Instagram marketing, I'm not gonna lie, called Pros. And the way they market themselves is that it's custom shampoo, conditioner, and then they also launched a skincare line. And I don't know how custom it actually is. I don't know the science behind it, but it was marketed with exactly what you're saying in mind, right? Yes, it's like there's that distance between most products and the consumer, like the process of how it gets there. So this company was like, let's pull back the veil, at least from a marketing standpoint, and tell you what's going to go into it. We'll give you a quiz, and then based on the quiz, we'll put the certain ingredients in the product, and then they print labels with your name on it. They charge you a premium and they ship it to you on a subscription-based model. Um, and I think it talks to your point about how important it is to not only be able to solve a problem or to be in your case, a scientist or an expert in something, but also to have those entrepreneurial skills that allow your product to get to market to test and see if it's
Right,
viable in the world. What was
right.
that like for you?
Well, the skincare is still, both businesses are still honestly in a business of one. It is just me. So with the skincare, I'm making all the products, I'm shipping all of the products, and my customers are receiving emails from me. They're receiving follow-ups from me. And what's so cool about it is because Rain Organica launched during late in the pandemic. So it hasn't been, it's not that old. And because it is just me backing this, it's not necessarily a huge business. What's so interesting, though, is being able to develop these personal connections with the clients and
Mm,
get feed. What's crazy is I'll send out an email and people will reply to it. And how often does that happen in a big business?
Yeah. It's funny because that's actually what big business tries to do now. The
Yeah.
whole like wave in email marketing is to have your subscribers actually reply. And I'm not sure how much you're aware of this, but at the time that we're recording it, there's a big move in decreasing the amount of spam, text messages, and email. And so there's like this behind the scenes men in black that is checking on the viability of your emails. So if you're using a big platform, um, to send emails. You pick whatever one it may be. If you're using a name server, you have to abide by certain rules, and people's emails were getting sent to spam because what you're doing is actually the gold standard. So there's this whole movement now. And hey, and I send these emails, hey, if you have something, if you have a thought about this, reply. I'm going to read it and respond to you, which is funny because the idea with the big business and with mass marketing was to sort of remove people and automate everything. But here
Mhm.
we are, I think, especially after the year that we all lost in 2020, we actually want you. We want to talk to Brandi, the creator of the business. She emailed me personally. It's a gem, right?
Right. And that's what's so cool about it. And that's what's so cool, I think, about owning your own business and being an entrepreneur is being able to make those connections. And to somebody, you are a superstar. So also having that in mind.
Now, there's a message there. There's a message there. I come across people and probably some of our listeners who don't always see themselves in entrepreneurship. They have a story about it. I'm I even talking from my own personal network, I'm a physician, not an entrepreneur, or I'm an actor, not an entrepreneur. I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm a scientist, not an entrepreneur. And the reality is, because entrepreneurship is problem solving, those are just skills. I always say there's two things that separate any person from getting where they need and want to go in this world of entrepreneurship, and it's beliefs and skills. First, you believe you can do it. If not, let's fix that. And then you just have to develop the skills. Those are the things that separate us. But you come from a background that a lot of people probably don't share with you. But I think it's such a good example that it doesn't really matter. You can develop the skills to be an entrepreneur. And in fact, even being small in terms of your operation, at least right now, is a great way to stand apart in the marketplace.
Yeah. Well, what's so great about being small is the fact that I can talk to Rain Organica newsletter subscribers any way I want. So I can
Mm,
talk with them about this new business, say, hey, I know this isn't skincare related, but actually it is. And here's why. And then we launch into it and say, for more, you know, reach out to me with any questions you have, or go follow me on my new account or the new business.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And that's also the testament to owning your own, to owning your list, right? To
Yeah.
owning your subscribers, your email, your contacts. We could really go down a whole rabbit hole about the importance of that, especially in today's market. I'm curious, you say that you're a two-time entrepreneur. You're also a scientist. What other things do you do in life that have somehow contributed to the success or even the challenging aspects of your journey?
Well, definitely for the second business, it's my own health journey that has led me here and led me to start it. It honestly is the biggest, I feel like. And I'm also a dog mom. So just being a caretaker for animals and pretty much my whole life, definitely my entire adult life, because it's a different capacity of me being actually responsible versus my parents being responsible. That also has really fed into this health business.
Yeah. That's interesting. I find a lot of the amazing women who come on this show are caregivers in some form or fashion. And I think there's an aspect to being a caregiver that lends itself well to the transition into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I feel like at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is really about sussing out what other people need and giving it to them. And in a caregiving responsibility, you're doing that exact same thing. And especially oftentimes with caregivers, it's you're taking care of people that can't communicate well. It's either children that aren't talking yet, children with special needs, or adults, the elderly that have had something go wrong and aren't able to communicate like they used to. So with all of these, you're figuring out, you're learning to read body language, you're learning to almost feel emotion. And it's the same thing with entrepreneurship. It's there's some sort of separation between in communication, because we are growing bigger audiences. It's still figuring out how to talk to those people, even when they aren't communicating necessarily with you in verbally, I would say, in words.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest misconceptions I see sometimes with my own clients is the idea that marketing is about manipulation. And we could go in depth and talk about how definition of manipulation is blah 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 blah. But the intent of when people say this is that it's bad, that marketing is bad. When they see other coaches online marketing, they get disgusted. Oh, I don't want to be like that, right? Or they see anything that's being marketed to them over time, people tend to become callous to it. And the best marketing is the one that connects with you. So a lot of times we're being marketed to as a test. You're being given targeted messages based upon what you're saying and what information you're providing online, and it's not reaching you, right? Because marketers are ultimately just testing to see what resonates. But then we all respond to ads. All of us purchase items because something about the messaging is good to us, right? And it's this
Yeah.
element about caretaking and empathy and understanding and listening that I personally believe is at the core of good branding and good marketing. Your ideal client, your ideal customer, the person it's meant to reach, it's going to infiltrate into their brains, into their minds, and help them see how this thing could solve a problem for them effortlessly.
Exactly. And when you're doing that for somebody, it's just like me where I am right now. I have had such a struggle and I think so much imposter syndrome with this new business, with the Better Than Fine, because like I have figured this piece of my journey out and have come out the other side of it. And now I know exactly what to do and exactly how to help others. It was so simple, at least this one piece, and here the one piece that I'm talking about is finally getting rid of UTI symptoms after struggling with them for a year and a half. That was so simple once I made all of the connections. And I mean, I've even written about it. I've had women reach out and say, hey, you know, that article that you wrote, it actually fixed my problems within two
Mm.
weeks. And I said, yeah, I know it was that fast. And so it's almost this thought of why would anybody pay for this? And what's happened in the business is that it's people that have deeper problems that aren't just the UTI symptoms, it's something else going on. And I have been able to help those people. And that requires a significant amount of research on my side. So it's not
Mm.
necessarily this face to face
Mm.
time, it's all of the back end stuff that they're not seeing. And with that, I'm now in this place of thinking, oh, okay, so I understand because if I had been able to provide to my clients essentially, I am the person I was seeking 10 years ago in my own health journey. And if I were 10 years younger and and knew the me of today back then, I would there is no price too high for my services. Like I would have found a way to pay if I could do what I could do today back then.
Because the pain and the problem was so great.
Yes,
The amount
absolutely.
of time it took you to solve it.
Not just the amount of time, but the number of healthcare professionals I have seen that have done
Mm.
nothing or made the problem worse.
Mm. Yeah. It's really pain and suffering. When we boil it down to it, the motivator, you know, we can get real granular and say people are motivated by two things, the avoidance of pain and the pursuit of pleasure, right? And when you're in pain and you're suffering and you happen to be a problem solver and a scientist, it creates this perfect sort of dynamic where what booms and comes out is a solution for you that now you get to pass on to other people. That's
Yeah.
like, that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. That's like the good stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. And I love that you're sharing this because it's so much more than just the other aspect, which is freedom and money, which is like what a lot of people like to talk about in marketing, because that's what people want. People want to talk about how starting an entrepreneurial journey can change your life and give you freedom, and it can. And especially for me, and if people who come to me, like, I care about that impact piece because making money is kind of a formula. Make something that solves a big problem, put it to market, test it. If they want it, they buy it. If they don't, they won't. You go back to the drawing board. That's just how it goes. But that piece, that impact piece, that solving problems that took you 10 years and countless service providers and the problem becoming worse, all of that and being able to say, boop, here you go. I'm going to solve this problem for you, sister. I'm going to solve this problem for you, brother. That to me is the seductive part of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Well, and I think one more piece to that, the me of today could have saved the me of yesterday tens of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
Like literally that much money. Looking at everything I've done over the past 10 years, all of the money I've sunk, all of the money I've wasted, all of the time I've wasted, all of the additional problems that were tacked onto it because I wasn't able to address the root problem back then. And then it exacerbated and threw other systems of the body out of balance and then kind of left me
Mm,
in this critical mess that I was in.
I love it. That's incredible. Let's talk about it. So we've been sort of tiptoeing. We've talked a little bit about the two businesses that you have. We talked already a little bit about Rain Organica, but better than fine. Tell us what exactly this business does and what your mission is.
Well, my mission is to help any woman out there who is dealing with symptoms and doesn't know why and is frustrated of going to doctors and being told that, well, there's nothing out of whack on your blood work, so I can't help you. Who is tired of that. My mission is to help her figure out what's going on so she can actually address it and reclaim her life.
UTI symptoms specifically, right?
Well, it started out with, so this is where
Okay.
being open to a brand transforming is you just have to roll with it. So it started out with UTI symptoms for me. When I stopped hormonal birth control, I developed my first ever UTI within about 2 weeks. And then struggled with UTI symptoms constantly, with or without a positive standard urine culture for a year and a half. I saw so many practitioners, was on, I can't even remember how many rounds of antibiotics. Um, Went down a lot of rabbit holes with all of this super advanced testing. And at the end of the day, it was me kind of thinking one day, you're practicing the definition of insanity, right? You keep doing these things and expecting different results, and you're not getting it. So you
Mm.
need to figure out what's going on. Um, I track my menstrual cycles. And so what happened, and I think this was divine providence of God finally saying, okay, you're ready now. I had a cycle consistent with PCOS, and I'd never had a cycle consistent with PCOS before. With that kind of all of the lights started going off in my brain of, I knew it was insulin resistance. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. And so then really diving into the research because it is not evident and figuring out that yes, there is a connection, in fact, between UTI symptoms and insulin resistance. And this is why even women on a keto diet will wind up with UTI symptoms because they're forcing their body into a state where it's not able to use carbs and is relying mostly on fatty acids or fats for fuel. And with that, you're disrupting lots of things going on into the bladder. And then you wind up with all of these symptoms of UTI, even if you don't have, even if you don't have an actual UTI.
Fascinating. recalling an earlier comment we made about science and about health, you said that tweetable moment, right? What we know isn't everything, and we don't always know if it's valid, right? You're constantly, as a scientist, you are testing the status quo, right? You're
Exactly.
fact checking yourself even. And so you have this journey, you're having these symptoms, these things aren't lining up. The current model of science is not giving you a solution. And so, but you keep trying because that's what we're told to do. We're told to go into this system and ask for the solution. If there's no solution there, then, there's gaps because it is science. It's not perfect, right? Like science is
Right.
not the all-knowing being. It's a science, it's a practice. And so you take it into
Well,
your own hands.
I think one piece there is science is limited by the human mind.
Ooh,
And so we are only as far as where we are.
yes. I love that. Um, and so you take the limitation, you say, I've had enough. I'm going to figure this out on my own. And so you have this aha moment, like, oh, wait a minute, this is consistent with this. Let me dive into it. Your science mind goes to work. And when was the moment that you had that like aha solution when everything started to change?
All right. So I quit hormonal birth control August 1st, 2021. It was September of 2023 when I wrote the article for Hormones Matter about my journey and how it all tied into all all buttoned up with a pretty little bow on this complete story of how insulin resistance is causing all of these. Now, it was probably early 2023. It was probably maybe January or February. Let's see. It was the cycle consistent with PCOS was either December or January of 2023. I'd already kind of made a bunch of changes, and the only symptom it fixed 75% of my problems in 2 weeks by adjusting, being sure I had enough B vitamins, altering my diet to one that was supportive of insulin resistance, helping to restore insulin sensitivity, and switching. I did a 180 in my exercise routine. I stopped doing all yoga and Pilates and went back to strength training, which is something I'd been doing before the pandemic. And seriously, within 2 weeks, the only symptom I was still experiencing was I would still have urinary urgency sometimes. It wasn't nearly as intense as it was when I was actively dealing with these symptoms. I was still having it. And with that, I needed a little bit of adjustment time. And by this point, I'd become friends with a pelvic floor therapist, and she said, "Oh yeah, it makes complete sense that you're still struggling with that because you have to reestablish the bladder brain connection." Well, one of the things diving even deeper into this is recognizing that especially women when they're perimenopausal, and so when estrogen and progesterone naturally start to decline, that estrogen especially really supports insulin sensitivity in the body. And one of the things I had been doing was I had been using DIM, so that diindolyl methane supplement that everybody is all the rave right now. Oh, you have estrogen dominance, take this. You have estrogen dominance, take this. And I'd been using it, especially when I stopped birth control to help, detox the synthetic estrogens from the body. That was exacerbating symptoms, and I didn't know it. And it took an additional few months to link that piece to it.
That's incredible. So now where you are especially to the woman listening that's like, I have these symptoms. What can I do right now? What advice do you have for them in their own research? How can they find you? How can they get your products? What do you offer?
Well, what I offer is my services. And I am actually working with women because the other piece to this is when I stopped hormonal birth control, UTI symptoms were the worst symptom I was experiencing. I was also dealing with weight gain, fatigue, and migraines for the first time in my life. And the migraines are directly due to the fact that I also have an autoimmune thyroid condition. I have been diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I was experiencing Hashimoto's encephalitis and didn't know it, once again because of this dramatic change in the amount of steroids circulating in my body. And so the
Wow.
way that I work with women now is, especially women who are dealing with those symptoms, fatigue, migraine, weight gain, I work with them to be sure that we aren't dealing with a hypothyroid state. And if we are, what else are we dealing with? Are we dealing with adrenals that are out of whack? And this might be either high or low, or it might be high certain times of the day, low other times of the day. Are we dealing with iron issues, either iron that's too low or too high? Because all of this impacts how well the body's cells actually absorb hormones from the bloodstream. So you've got
Mm.
these circulating levels of thyroid hormones in the bloodstream.
Hmm.
It does you no good in the bloodstream. They've got to get in the body's tissues.
So you work with women one on one. You take in all of the information you can get. You take in the blood work, other things, the symptoms, and you help find the solution that actually fits their unique situation.
Yeah.
Interesting. And because of your background in product creation, do you also have specific products that you're offering, or is it really focused on finding that unique solution for every woman?
Yeah. So one of the things that I mega loathe is supplements and the fact that everybody has all these
Mm.
supplements. So we're being sold all of these supplements that are doing things really downstream from where the problem is. Because
Hmm.
if we kind of go back to the basics and we look at what are the essential vitamins, what are the essential minerals, and the essential nutrients that a body needs, if you give your body those and your body is able to in a state where it's able to handle those, your body is smart enough to do the rest, and you don't have to give it
Wow.
the 1800 supplements that we've been told.
This is not the answer I was expecting you to give at all. It's very
Yeah.
counterculture.
Yeah.
There's, I mean, by all means, you should be selling people a supplement. Your background would support that you could do it, right? Your previous business where you created a product supports that you should do it. Like there's a need in the market. You should absolutely be providing a supplement, but instead you're saying, no, your body has essential needs that are probably being depleted. You're not getting them anyway because you're probably taking all these supplements you don't need. So let's just give your body what it actually needs to heal, and we will way find and problem solve those symptoms over time to get you back in balance.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So
Yeah.
how tell me how can people find you if they're like, I need this solution? How do they get to you?
So I am at Feel Better Than Fine. And for any woman that is that's the business may be better than fine. That domain name was taken. So I'm at Feel Better Than Fine. I'm also at Feel Better Than Fine on all of the social channels and on YouTube. For any woman out there suffering with UTI symptoms, I'll provide the link to the two articles in Hormones Matter that guide you through at least where to start.
Perfect. And in terms of working with you, who would you love to hear from?
I love to hear from women who are struggling with kind of the weird symptoms. So this is the woman that has the fatigue and the migraines, the woman that um, she's healthy in every respect. She watches her diet, she exercises, all of the things, but she's got something weird going on, like, for instance, high cholesterol or high blood pressure. And then she's put on blood pressure meds, kind of just to cover up the fact that something else hasn't been figured out.
Perfect. So you want those challenges. You want those women that have tried this stuff, that things aren't making sense, are not connecting, they're still dealing with symptoms. That's the perfect person to reach out to you. And is it okay if they DM you? Is there a contact form on the website? Just so they, sometimes when we're in pain, the better, more specific instructions we can give, the better it is to solve the problem. So what is it they could specifically do to find you?
So I'm always available at hey, Hey at feelbetterthanfine.com. And if there's not an email address on the website right now, which there may not be because the website's actively being worked on and updated and all the things, then DM on Instagram is perfectly fine. Um, Reaching out to me at Rain Organica is fine. Hey at rainorganica.com is also fine.
Incredible, truly. So, Brandi, before we wrap up here today, is there anything, any message that you have or any subject that we just didn't get a chance to talk about that you feel is important to share?
There is a lot of misinformation out there. There's tons of misinformation out there. With Hashimoto's, I was diagnosed back in 2018. I was suffering with symptoms actively in 2016. And it took 2 years to diagnose, lots of healthcare practitioners. Even after the diagnosis, I have been led astray multiple times by healthcare practitioners saying, don't take iodine. That's a huge no-no. Every cell in your body needs iodine. It's an essential nutrient that we are deficient. Most of us are deficient in. I've had practitioners say there's no need to treat your Hashimoto's. That's a huge no-no. That's a red flag, like run in the other direction
Mm,
from it. But there is so much misinformation out there. And if your body is telling you something, if you feel the intuition, or that gut feeling that there's more to this than what your doctor is saying, find somebody else.
amazing advice. I love it. Okay, so it's time for matter of fact. And, this part of our show is really special. It's the time where I ask our amazing guests, just like you, to step into their moment of truth, but fact, right? And this is kind of your own personal spotlight. It's a totally safe space, and it's about empowering you to brag a little or a lot. And if you don't feel comfortable bragging, at least tell us what it is that you have actually accomplished. It's not always easy for high achieving and high performing women to talk about that. And that's okay because right here on the show, it's not only just okay, it's really celebrated. So tell us the things that you have accomplished. Tell us the hard numbers, the shiny awards, those big milestones that define your success and your journey. And this isn't about just patting yourself on the back. It's actually creating a way for others to see themselves in you and to know what's possible, right? So
Yeah.
I only have three rules, for matter of fact. One is no disclaimers. Second is no shame. And the third is your kids or your dogs and your family, they don't count. We already know that you love them. So, Brandi Searcy, the stage is yours.
All right. One of my biggest accomplishments, the thing that I was so proud about for years and years, is the fact that I graduated from Georgia Tech. And especially considering the fact that my third grade teacher told my mom that I would always be average.
Ooh,
So so that was a huge
she
accomplishment.
was
And
wrong.
the only thing that has upstaged that is I overcame chronic UTI symptoms after suffering for a year and a half. And for anybody who doesn't really know kind of where this path leads, what happens is when healthcare professionals can't figure out why you have UTI symptoms, they suspect that you must have interstitial cystitis. This leads down Interstitial cystitis is an autoimmune condition. It's supposedly an autoimmune condition. It's also known as painful bladder syndrome. And this leads down a lifetime of pain and lots of kind of invasive surgeries.
Mm.
So I broke free of that path. That is, I mean, just, and I did that by going back to the basics. I did that on my own by figuring out all of the research, and I am hell bent on getting my autoimmune antibody levels down to normal.
Bravo. That's incredible. That's incredible. Congratulations. And
Yeah.
congratulations on taking your journey and turning it into a service where you get to now pour in to others to save them the time, pain, money, and suffering that you experienced. So you've lived this really big, fascinating life. You accomplished a lot in your career, became a scientist, graduated from Georgia Tech, became a scientist, right? You've moved across the country multiple times. You live in the most beautiful place in the world, in my opinion. You live in Southern California. You rescue dogs. You have a happy life. And you've had two businesses, both which aim at solving problems for women, quite frankly. And you've done a lot and you're still going. So, my question for you, Brandi, is how do you do it?
All right. It is absolutely shameful that we don't have, that our doctors don't know more. And it's really no fault of their own. It's how things are set up, how they're trained. But it is shameful. And when I dig into the research and I see all of these symptoms and I think back through my life and I'm like, you know what? I didn't have hypothyroid symptoms just starting in 2016. I had hypothyroid symptoms showing up when I was a child. And that, to think about how different my life would be today, to think about how different my childhood would have been if this had been addressed way back then. And where I see my path going is sheer foaming at the mouth activism. That
Mm,
is coming.
mm,
Like,
that's a
take the
visual.
pill, take the pill off the market. We don't need it. We have all of these fertility awareness methods that are as effective as hormonal birth control and give women so much more insight into what's going on with their bodies on a day-to-day basis. The whole gambit. Take the fluoride out of the water. Like, I'm that kind of foaming at the mouth. Um, it's gonna,
Passionate.
yeah, at
Yeah.
some point that's gonna happen.
I love your passion, your tenacity. I love your story. And I love what you've chosen to do with your background, with your very smart brain, and also with your heart. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this incredible conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Brandi Searcy, for being on the podcast today. And I look forward to sharing with our viewers more about you, more about your businesses. They can find everything in the show notes. And until next time, take care.